Welcome back to the Fronczak Files. I'm Paul Jack Fronczak.
And I'm Tracey Hastings. Last week, we sat down with private investigator and former Secret Service agent Nino Parada to talk about his work on one of the most haunting missing persons cases you'll ever hear. The disappearance of Jill Rosenthal, Jack Fronczak's twin sister. Nino shared how he became involved, the obstacles he's faced, and the steps he's taken to uncover the truth in a case that's been cold for nearly 6 decades. Today, we're taking you even deeper. In this episode, we'll peel back the layers of the events that led up to the disappearance of the Rosenthal twins, trace the investigation's twists and turns, and look at where the search for Jill has been, and potentially where it's headed next. This is the story of a sister lost, and a brother who refuses to stop looking. This is Episode 7, Part 2, The Investigation.
All right, so Tracey, last week we discovered that Jack and Jill were born twins on October 27th, 1963 in New Jersey. Jill disappeared around July 1965, shortly before her second birthday.
And over the course of this podcast, we've also discovered that Jack, known initially as Scott McKinley, was found abandoned in a stroller outside of a department store in New Jersey in July of 1965.
I also discovered my true identity as Jack Rosenthal through genetic genealogy by C.C. Moore in 2015. I also learned of my missing twin sister, Jill.
In a previous episode, you met Susan Wallert, who was the babysitter who was witness to the abuse and neglect that Jack and Jill endured living in cages, and who was told by her mother that the abuse was none of her business.
So in the course of this journey, I was able to meet my Uncle Frank. That was the brother of my biological mother, Marie. And I got to spend a couple of hours with him in his house in Tennessee, and we got to share a little bit about each other's lives. And thankfully, he was able to cover growing up with his sister and kind of gave us snapshots of what happened a little bit before Jill and I were born.
How did that feel to you, meeting a biological uncle?
You know, I don't have many regrets in my life, but the one I think I would say I would have would be that I wish I would have recorded our interview, because there I was with real biological family who actually knew my mom as a child and a young adult. And it was so surreal that when it was happening, I wasn't really capturing everything I wanted to capture. I mean, it was just, when you're searching so hard to find something and then you finally get close to it, sometimes that moment kind of just disappears because you're so caught up in it that after it happened, you're like, did that just happen? And then you're trying to scramble to recall every single thing that you talked about. And it's really hard. I've got pieces that were really good and I really hung on to, but some things I know he covered so much material in such a short time that a lot of it, I was still caught up in the fact that I can't believe I'm sitting here with my uncle, because we've searched so hard to find real people that have known either Gilbert or Marie.
And here was someone who grew up with Marie, who, if anyone could give you detailed information about your biological mother, it should be this man. And also, it's hard to be the investigator of your own mystery. How do you separate yourself from it, but also keep yourself immersed in it at the same time? That's nearly impossible. So I totally understand where you're coming from, how the overwhelming feeling of, this is an uncle of mine. This person knew my biological mother, presumably pretty well. Also, this man could solve this enduring mystery, too. He could say something that could crack this case wide open. So how do you reconcile the investigator in you as well as the person at the center of all of this?
Tracey, you know what? You just nailed it right on the head, because I've been an investigator on this whole journey since I started in 2012. It wasn't happening to me. It was happening to somebody else. I was just investigating it, trying to find the answers. So when I was sitting right next to this guy, I was the investigator trying to find out information, but I wasn't the guy it was happening to. And that's where the disconnect was. And that's why I wish I would have recorded it, because then I could go back. Luckily, I do have a transcript from the film that we shot because we shot an interview for the film. Unfortunately, I guess the producers felt it didn't move the story forward or whatever their agenda was, so it was completely cut out. But luckily, I was able to get a copy of that transcript.
And then when you shared that transcript with me and with the team, we were all just, our jaws dropped. The information that Frank Duncan provided was invaluable. And it really gave us a new insight into the case, into your abandonment and your sister's disappearance, angles that maybe we hadn't thought of before because we didn't have all the information. And so it was a real stroke of luck that we were able to get a hold of the transcript and really be able to dig into it and take it apart and pull out of it the information that has helped us formulate a new potential theory about the events leading up to what happened to you and Joel.
Absolutely. It was one of those Hail Mary moments. I just fired an email off to the producers. I was like, hey, any chance you guys had the transcript from that one little piece that we did, 5 years ago? And they got back to me. Yeah, we have that. We'll send it to you.
And it was a phenomenal piece of reading it for sure. It had so much good information in it. And so you want to start taking a dive into it for our listeners? We can start sharing some of the stuff that your uncle shared with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, we have a great team, but we can't find any proof that my uncle has passed away. But yet the production company said, well, you can have this transcript because he passed away. So that's an interesting point that we're still trying to work out.
Right. It begs the question, first of all, how do they know that? What information, what proof do they have that he's passed away? Because our team, which can find anyone anywhere, and they've proven it time and time again, they cannot find any information that says that he has definitively passed away.
Yeah. Yeah. Once again, this whole journey has been full of mystery. And the more things we learn, the more things we don't know.
It's true. The more things that we discover, the less we realize we know about what's going on. It's
Yeah.
fascinating, but frustrating all at the same time.
It really is. But it keeps you going. It's like that adrenaline.
Yeah,
It's like, well, we found this piece. So just because we found another 5 things we have to find, we found that one piece. So you've got to keep moving forward.
and I think that, you and this team have resigned ourselves to the fact that I don't think there's an end to this story, at least not in the foreseeable future, because we continue to uncover new information that nobody would have expected us to be able to find. Even us, we are uncovering stuff we weren't expecting to find that are definitely adding a new element to the story.
And the good thing is, season 2 is going to be all about us helping other people. So we can still drive this story and still work on it and find the answers that we're looking for while we're helping other people
Absolutely.
to keep feeding that fire.
We want to use their skills, the unique set of skills that we have assembled at the Fronczak Files to help other people like you who may question who they are or where they come from or have a missing relative that they're looking for. And we're here to help because we know how that feels.
Kind of like Liam Neeson when he described his set of skills
Yes,
to the
his
guy on the
unique
phone.
set of skills.
Right. Yeah, we have them. We definitely have those
Right?
skills.
And
It's keeping us going.
sort of ironic that the film was called Taken because, you were abandoned and then taken to Chicago and put in the wrong place. And it seems like a great analogy.
I guess I was taken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you were taken.
Yeah. All right. So basically what Frank told me was that my mom, when she was a younger, child, growing up, teenager years, she always kept to herself. She wasn't part of the family. She would come downstairs to get her meals and then go back upstairs to her room. Wouldn't talk to anybody, had no communication, just stayed really private. She'd only come out and then, if she had to. And he said that early on, she wasn't drinking very much, but then later on, she became a very heavy drinker. Just drinking in her room, that kind of stuff. And that's not good.
No. And for a little bit of context, Marie was the oldest child in the family and Frank was the youngest. So I think if memory serves, there was a 10-year gap between them, probably.
Yes.
So Frank was looking at this through the lens of a young boy. And so some of that recollection was probably hard for him because he was young and remembering her more in her teenage years. But these things seemed to stick out to him. He did notice how much of an introvert she appeared to be, that she didn't join in family conversations if there were any. She didn't take part in family meals and sort of kept to herself. And really, you get the impression that Frank felt he really didn't know her that well.
Yeah, that's basically what he said. So Marie was from the Duncans and their background pretty much her dad, Cecil, was an alcoholic, and he frequently beat his wife. He worked night shifts, spent mornings drinking at the bar, then he'd come home and he'd abuse the family. Sometimes he kept Frank and his brother John home from school, then punished them for not attending. So, I mean, that's passive aggressive, borderline, just cruel.
This is alcoholic behavior for sure, setting people up for a fall and then punishing them for it. Just punishing people for being at home when they get home from their binge. You're here, you're in my house, and I'm going to beat you up. So this is all classic alcoholic behavior. And I think also our understanding was that Jenny, Marie's mother, was also a drinker. So you've got two people with an addiction issue, likely coming from dysfunctional backgrounds themselves, trying to put together a family and raise four children on rather probably not a lot of money, especially if they were both drinking and spending money on alcohol
And they had all those children.
and had all those children. And we know that dysfunction stems from socioeconomic problems and complications. And so the answer to feeling better for them is to drink. I don't want to think about my problems, so I'm going to go to the bar and drink and go home and beat the family. And it's just a vicious cycle. And then Jenny's coping with his drinking by drinking herself. And the children are being raised in an atmosphere where they're seeing alcohol as the solution to the problems.
You know, it's funny. Frank, he said he had one good memory with Marie out of all those years of living together. He said one afternoon they were on a lake and they went in a boat and they took a boat ride, you know, like probably like a rowboat kind of thing. And he said that was the nicest memory he has of her. And that was it. Imagine growing up with someone and that's the only memory you have. That's good.
Yeah. Then, I mean, I guess it's fortunate that there was at least one good memory that he had. But yeah, being, especially with an oldest sibling and a youngest sibling, I think, you know, traditionally there's a protective element there that the older sibling looks after the younger one and would, especially with a 10-year age gap, typically, especially her being the only girl in the family and the oldest, you know, sometimes would take on that role of like a second mom. But it sounds like Marie was not really interested in knowing anybody in her family or interacting with them. And when you realize the history there, you can see why.
We also learned something that no one else had seemed to know was that my mom actually had a child before she left Ohio. She had a child, a male, and gave him away, either through an adoption or whatever, but she didn't keep that baby. I have the birth certificate. There wasn't a father listed, just Marie Duncan.
Clearly, this she has a history of giving away children. I guess we can assume some things by what we know about the situation. So, if she knew who the father of this baby was, or she might not have known necessarily. We don't have any history about her activities at that time. But what we do know clearly just from the situation is that she had an unwanted pregnancy and delivered this baby at St. Thomas Hospital in Akron, Ohio in 1958. He was named Richard, and he was born weighing 2 pounds, is my understanding, extremely low birth weight, potentially premature. For this day and age, it's actually sort of surprising that the baby survived. My guess is that the baby was probably close to term, but was born what we call intrauterine growth restricted. And that can happen if mom is drinking and or smoking during the pregnancy, can lead to a dangerously low weight birth weight baby who is term though. So which means that the lungs are functioning reasonably well. And that's really what's critical for a newborn to be able to make it through those first dangerous few days when they're born that small is having well-formed lungs so that they can breathe. That's typically the most difficult part about taking care of a very small micro baby like that is, can you get an intubation tube down their throat? If you cannot, do they have the adequate lung ability to breathe on their own? So clearly this baby was a fighter and resilient. We could put a picture up on the website of the footprints that were on this certificate, and they are very tiny to give you an idea of how small this baby was. So my guess is that She was drinking, she was smoking, she was doing all of those things during the pregnancy, potentially delivered maybe slightly prematurely. And then somehow this child ended up being raised by another family in Ohio. And that this was unknown to anybody in the family. So it establishes a pattern, right? That she had an unwanted child and she gave this child away. We don't have any proof that there was a legal adoption done for this child. We also don't have any proof that it was illegally done as well. We don't really have anything either way. But it does speak to the question of how could a mother give away her children or abandon her children? She had done it before.
And so my thought is, so Frank was about 10 years younger, so he must have been home when she had that child. But he never mentioned that to me.
And it's interesting that Frank doesn't mention that she was pregnant. It doesn't appear that that was mentioned anywhere in the interview or the transcript that he recalls her.
It wasn't. I would remember that.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that it's really likely that he was around to see this, unless, there's also a practice at the time where you sent women away. If they were pregnant with an unwanted child, they would go to live with relatives. They would, people be told, oh, they're gone for the summer or whatever the case may be. So they would hide them away because it was shameful to have a daughter having an illegitimate child. So it's possible that if she confided in her mother, which I think we believe that she did tell Jenny that she was pregnant, that potentially she made arrangements for her to be out of sight so that nobody would realize that that was the case. And that would explain why Frank doesn't have any recollection of her being pregnant.
And her mom probably helped facilitate either the adoption or the giving away or the abandoning, whatever she did to that child.
Yeah, we do know, we do have proof that the woman who raised Richard worked in the same hospital as Marie's mother, Jenny, where her mother trained as a medical assistant in the same facility as the woman that raised Richard. So it leads to the question of, did these two women know one another? And how was this potentially arranged between them, that they wanted a baby and she had a daughter about to have an illegitimate child? And is this how this came about, with Jenny's help?
Yeah, the smart money is, they were friends.
It seems too coincidental to be a coincidence.
I agree 100%. After that, shortly after, Marie hooked up with Gilbert Rosenthal, who lived he was in the service, and then he was he was from Pennsylvania, and then moved to Atlantic City. So she somehow met him in Florida.
Yeah, that's what Frank said, that his recollection was that they met in Florida. The team cannot place either one of them in Florida during that time period, but that's not necessarily unusual, especially if it was a really short span of time that they spent in Florida. They wouldn't maybe necessarily have established an address to be in directories. They might not have, been part of a census, anything like that.
She might have went there on vacation or something and just met him.
Yeah, and he could have done the same. He could have been visiting friends, or people connect with one another in unusual ways. So we still don't have the details regarding that, but it was a new piece.
His brother was living in Florida.
Oh, so
right?
That's entirely possible that he was there visiting Leonard, potentially.
Yeah, my Uncle Leonard.
And Marie could have been visiting someone there as well. I guess if we wanted to really speculate, we could say that maybe Marie was sent to Florida when she was pregnant with Richard. That they knew someone there. She went to Florida, had the baby. This was all arranged. And so she went back to Florida because she knew people there potentially. There's so many different avenues that this could go, but no evidence at this time to suggest how they ran into one another.
Yet. There's no information yet.
So far.
But I'm sure we'll find something, because that's what we do.
And then Frank talked about that he did attend their wedding. And so he was able to meet Gilbert in person and see them interacting together, sort of see that dynamic. What do you recall him saying about how your parents interacted with each other?
It sounded like they were kind of normal, but she didn't want him around the house. Like when he came to visit, it's just, he wasn't really welcome, and he felt it. Like he said that when him and his wife first of all, Frank couldn't wait to leave his family's house in Ohio. He left at a very young age because it was a horrible place to be. And he said that him and his first wife stayed with Marie and Gilbert briefly after running away to get married. Said that they always felt really unwelcome when they moved into their place. And so eventually they had to find their own place. So he said they moved to a place about only a mile and a half away, but he never really saw his sister. They had really brief encounters, like maybe 15 or 20 minutes. He never saw any of Marie's children during visits from 1960 to 65. And that's when Marie had the bulk of us. I mean, since, all of us were born between 60 and 65. That's 5 children. But he never saw any of them.
Right.
And he said the visits would happen
And
only during the day when the children would not have been in school, but yet none were present.
right, you were all of you were too young to be in school or be anywhere else but at home. So how in the world do you hide children
No, there's no
in your house and keep them quiet when you've got
because the
company?
house wasn't big, as Susan told us, gave us the layout of the actual house in Pitney
Right.
Village, right? It wasn't a big
Yeah.
house. So how can you hide 5 children and toys,
Right.
food,
How do you
everything?
keep
You
that a
you can't. I
secret?
mean, I had one daughter, and
You
as
wouldn't
soon as you
think.
walked in, you knew it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I've got 2 kids. You walked in my house, you knew, oh, kids live here. You just you have a lived-in home where you see evidence of children. If you don't see them actually in the home, you see evidence of them in the home of some type. Yeah. How do you keep children quiet when you've got company? I wish, yeah, I knew had the answer to that because it's just not logical. But this is clearly his recollection because he repeats it several times during the interview that he did not know she had any children. He never saw any of them. He never interacted with them. And uh, these are things he found out after the fact. And he also said that he feels like that there was a shift in the relationship between Marie and Gilbert when they bought the house that you and Jill came home to. That something about buying this house was a catalyst for causing stress in the relationship, likely due to, I guess we could surmise that it has to do with money, especially if you've got lots of young children, all in diapers, and you've got 2 parents who are spending a lot of money on alcohol because they're drinking heavily. That can lead to a lot of financial stress and issues.
Yeah, so we also uncovered that, Marie had a gambling problem as well as a drinking problem, and the first house that they actually bought, they ended up losing due to poor handling of finances, not paying bills, things like that, and that's when they had to move in with my, Gilbert, his mom for a while, and then they moved into, Pitney Village, which was the housing project.
So you can see this pattern of behavior that there is this continuing issue with an inability to pay bills, to maintain a stable home, and stemming from a lot of addiction issues
Yeah, for sure.
and interacting with her own relatives. This is her youngest brother. He comes over to the house, he wants to visit. He never feels comfortable there. He always feels like he's intruding to a degree. The visits are very brief. And I don't believe that Gilbert was there in most of these encounters as well. I think Frank stressed the fact that he didn't necessarily know Gilbert very well. He didn't get to spend a lot of time with him. But when he did go to the house, it was only to see Marie. She was the only person he'd interact with, and it'd be very brief. And then he'd get uncomfortable and leave.
And then it seems like after Marie's father passed away, that her mom started traveling to Atlantic City a lot more to hang out with Marie. Like, I think Frank said it was almost like weekly or biweekly she would hop down there to hang out.
Yeah, that she'd go on the weekends, I think is what he said. That, yeah, I don't think he specified how she got there, whether she was taking a train or a bus or driving or flying. I don't think we had that information, but clearly Jenny Duncan had means to travel because she was going back and forth from Ohio to Atlantic City pretty regularly to see Marie, which shows us that Marie did have some type of a relationship with her mother. Uh, Whether it was functional or not, I don't believe, but that she did feel some attachment to her mother and her mother to her because they did seem to spend a lot of time together.
But he also did say oddly that the mom never stayed at Marie's house. They always met in a restaurant or a public place, which That's kind of weird.
This is her mother, and she's not letting her mother into her home to see her grandchildren, to help her in the house. Hey, usually when moms come over to the house to see the grandkids, they're doing dishes and laundry and running the vacuum and bringing a bag of groceries. Like, this is what moms do. But Marie was meeting her mother in a restaurant, and clearly Jenny was staying somewhere else while she was spending these weekends in Atlantic City.
And not only to like to do things like that, but just to hang out in your house. I mean, that's where you live. Why wouldn't you have your mom into your own house?
It begs the question,
Yeah.
why was she keeping everyone at arm's length all the time and not letting people into the details of her life behind
Yeah.
those closed doors? People that should know what's going on didn't.
And so we also learned from Frank that Gilbert, my dad, in 1965 left the family for about 6 months. And that's when he thinks that Marie's mom really came down a lot and was really, maybe they were scheming something. Why did Gilbert leave? Were there too many children in the house? And so we asked him, do you think that Marie would be capable of abandoning children? And he said he wouldn't be surprised by anything that his mom or his sister did. So I was wondering if he actually did remember her having that first child and abandoning it or giving it away, but just didn't want to say anything.
Because what's he basing that on? He wouldn't be surprised if his mother or his sister would do such a thing. Based on what? If he's aware that this had happened once before, that's a good explanation for what he's basing his guess on, his answer on that. Yeah, because it's happened before. The mom helped arrange for this baby to disappear, and would they be have the potential to do it again? Sure. And I think that that's a really great place to start from as well with regards to Gilbert. He left for 6 months. Why did he leave? Well, I mean, we can conjecture because we don't really know, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that there's all these children in the house, and he essentially told her she needed to fix it. Fix this. I'm not dealing with this anymore. You need to fix this. We have to think about the time frame that we're in as well. We're talking the early 1960s. Things were very different then. And women were at fault for having a baby every year. It was the woman's fault that she was getting pregnant. It's always the woman's fault. So with that, with that cultural touchstone being there, that this is how this was perceived, that birth control should have fallen upon the woman's responsibilities to make sure that there wasn't babies coming every year. So you fix it. You've created this problem. Now you need to fix it. And so he disappears. And if Marie confided in her mother that, Gilbert is gone, I have all these kids and I'm trying to take care of them all by myself, I need help. He said he won't come back unless I fix this. Jenny might have been willing to help her fix it.
And what better way to fix it than to get rid of the twins?
When you have 3 children in 10 months, yeah, with a sister being born in January of 63 and a set of twins being born in October of 63, 3 kids in 10 months is overwhelming to anybody, let alone people with addiction issues and pre-existing dysfunction. And so how do you solve this problem? What do you do? Well, this is how we solved the problem before. We had an unwanted child and we made that child disappear. So we can do it again.
And going back a few episodes when we got to meet Susan Woolard, the babysitter, if we can work and use her timeline, it seems like maybe this happened pretty close to after when she watched us. And maybe Marie was a little concerned about someone calling CPS for abusing the twins, for neglecting them. And maybe she thought, you know what? I want my husband back. These twins have been nothing but a problem, and we might have CPS on us or some other legal action. Maybe we should just get rid of that problem, and maybe everything else will work out.
Yeah, when you look at the timeline, and Susan says that she likely babysat you and Jill in May, likely, or June of 1965. And then Gilbert is gone in 1965. So shortly after that, potentially, because Susan did say that Gilbert was there when she was reprimanded for helping the twins. So he was still there at that time. We can still put him in the house at that point in time, potentially after the fact. he might have been the one concerned that CPS was going to be called, and he bailed because he didn't want to get involved. He didn't want to be under scrutiny, and told Marie to fix the problem, because we don't need the law on us.
I just had a thought. Maybe Gilbert was actually gone at that time and they were trying to get back together. That's why they went on a date that was overnight somewhere.
That's also a possibility. They were trying to keep it together, and then he
Yeah.
decided that this wasn't going to work unless something changed.
Because that makes sense because if you wanted to spend some time with her, try to work it out and, talk about getting back together, why would they stay in the house with all those kids?
Sure. And that might have even been where the conversation could have been had, that this can't go on this way. Something has to change. And then by Susan going to the nursery and seeing all, you two, and helping you, that probably scared them potentially into thinking that, yeah, we're going to have people knocking on our door now because she's going to talk. So we need to fix it.
Oh my God, Tracy, what if they were actually just starting to hatch this idea on that overnight date? Like, if only we didn't have these twins, our life would be, maybe we can get back together and work things out. And then when they came back and the whole thing happened with the babysitter, that really sped up their plans. Like, we need to do this now.
Right. Because somebody's going to come knocking on our door soon and arrest us for
Yeah.
child abuse. So we have to get rid of the evidence because she might talk. And they were already maybe potentially on the path to getting rid of them
Yeah.
anyway. And this just pushed it into
Boy,
fast forward.
that's a great theory right there.
And this is what happens when you talk things out, right? When you take information, bits and pieces, talk it out, hear yourself saying it, and then the pieces sort of start to come together.
Now, if only we had this recorded. Oh, we do.
Oh, but wait, we do.
Thank God for podcasts.
Right? And that sort of segues into our next episode, where we're going to talk about theories. And that's actually something we just came up with right here. So
That's a good theory. Yeah.
it's a good
You heard it
theory.
here first.
Outside observations about this case. We have established that alcoholism, addiction, and money probably played a big part in what happened to you and Jill. That your Uncle Frank is suspicious of your mother and his mother being involved in your abandonment and the disappearance of Jill.
And he said it very, very nonchalantly, like he knew it. He just meant it. It wasn't like he was speculating.
Sure, it seemed when you read the transcript that was a statement, not a question. And that Marie's alcoholism, coupled with something that we call short interval pregnancies in the obstetrical world. So when women are having babies less than 18 months apart, that's what's considered a short interval pregnancy. And we know that your mother was having babies every year. And in 1963, she actually had 3 of them. So these short interval pregnancies can contribute to severe cases of postpartum depression, possibly psychosis. Anyone in the true crime world out there listening might know of the Andrea Yates case in Texas, where this woman had several short interval pregnancies. She had 5 children in 4 years, and was suffering with postpartum psychosis, which went unrecognized by her husband and the people around her. She was sequestered in her home most of the time, didn't really leave, didn't really see people. She drowned all 5 of her children in the bathtub, believing that she was saving their souls and sending them to heaven. From the outside looking in, people say, how in the hell could that have happened? How could a mother do that to their child? We know it happens. She is a modern day example of how short interval pregnancies can lead to tragic endings for children.
So there's other players in this that were around, besides Frank and Marie, my Uncle Leonard. In a previous episode with Nino, the ex-Secret Service guy, our PI, who's the real life Jason Bourne, he was able to track down my Uncle Leonard, who I was able to hop on a red eye and get down there as quick as possible. He was in Atlantic City Hospital, the same hospital where Jill and I were born. And they had no security. I just walked right in. I found his room and I just walked in and started talking with him. And I just said, I'm Jack, your brother's son. And he's like, oh my God, where have you been all this time? he was kind of fading in and out. He was all drugged up, extremely paranoid. Like he would call me over and say, "The nurses are trying to kill me. They're giving me all this drugs. They want my money. They want me dead." And then he'd just kind of pop off and talk about something else. And it was, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's what nurses want. Yes.
and the whole time when he'd say, "Come closer," I was like, okay, I heard stories where this guy would just kill people and he was the devil. I don't want to get too
Right.
close, in combat, you
Right.
got to be
He
within
might
three
shank you.
feet, right? Or something like that. Even though he was tied to tubes in a chair, you never know.
Right?
How far is his reach? I don't know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Legitimate concerns.
Yeah. So so I kept pressuring him. He after we talk a little bit, I'd say, "What happened to Jill? What happened to Jill?" Like I'm trying to jog his memory, trying to hit that trigger, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden you go, "Oh my God, I remember." But it didn't quite happen like that. But he did tell me a story of how him and his wife and family went to Marie's house to see the babies, and Marie was drunk, and she's like, "You want to see the twins? I'll show you the twins." She went upstairs. She brought us both down. Jill and I were both naked. She stopped in about the third step. He said she was holding us by our wrists like little chickens. And from like the third step, just dropped us. And we both hit the floor with a thud. He said I jumped up and I ran over to Leonard and was hugging him like I didn't want to let go because I didn't want to go back to that hell. And to him, it was like he said that something might have happened to Jill from that fall because it was a pretty bad fall. And she was a little smaller than me. I mean, those are stories that even if you're old and forgetful and maybe drugged up in a hospital, those stories probably stay with you. I'm. It sounded like it was the truth. Don't think he was spinning a yarn right there because just the way he said it, like his eyes and things, it looked like he was remembering. He wasn't making something up. So when you hear stories like that, it really makes you wonder, how were these people to do something like that?
Did he say when she threw you down the stairs, what Jill did?
He just said that she just laid there. I don't think she was killed right then. I think that would be another conversation. It probably would have led to the
Agreed,
cops coming to the house, or
for
maybe not.
sure.
I don't know.
But it does speak to the level of abuse. This is a woman who has not bonded with her babies, just based on just how she was carrying you and her response to. Most mothers are proud to show off their children. If a relative comes over to the house and says, "Oh, let me see the little ones," moms can't stop talking about their babies and showing them off. And this gives a real terrifying snapshot into what was happening in that house at that time and the potential for physical harm to have come to both of you.
When Michelle and I had Emma, I never had a child before, so I remember everyone said you can't let the head fall because they can't control their head, and I think Emma was like maybe 13 years old. I was still trying to hold her head up so it wouldn't fall. You know? No, I'm kidding.
Aren't you still
But
that way?
yeah, yeah, I still carry her around like
Yes,
that. She's
yes, you
she's
do.
taller than me,
Right?
5'11".
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
hilarious
it's
to
it's a
see. No.
real big carry, but the head can't fall. Okay.
Right?
But I mean, for my mom to just hold us like chickens by our wrists and throw us down three steps, that's insane.
Yeah, it speaks to the level of abuse and neglect and anger that was channeled towards you and Jill. She was clearly angry about having the twins, and both of you took the brunt of that anger coupled with her addiction and all of the other complications that were coming into play. It was the perfect storm. So that's a little bit of background, which hopefully will bring us, some clarity to the situation, where we can sort of see how the question being, how could a mother do that to her children? Well, we've established that there's a precedence for it, and we set the scene as to what was contributing to her behaviors. So once you discovered that you were actually Jack Thomas Rosenthal, the son of Gilbert Rosenthal and Marie Duncan Rosenthal, and you discovered you also had a twin sister who has been missing since your recovery in 1965. Talk us through the steps for that. Filing a missing persons report for your missing twin.
Okay, so first of all, I did not want to do that. We started off, we found the real Paul. That was really important to me. Whenever you open up an investigation, you're shut out. You no longer know what's happening. You can't just go and, if you find somebody, contact them or anything like that because it's part of an investigation. So I avoided that at all costs. And I finally hit a brick wall. I'm like, you know what? I can't find any more answers right now. I've got to go to law enforcement. So I figured I'll go to Atlantic City PD because that's where it happened. I'll just open a missing persons case. That would in turn allow me to work with NCMEC, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, because you need a legit missing persons case opened. So I go to Atlantic City, to the police department. I walk up to the window, and this elderly lady started asking me questions why I'm there. And I said, I want to open a missing persons case. And she's like, for who? And I said, for my sister. She said, okay, how long has she been missing? I said, about 50 plus years. She kind of laughed. And then I said, well, this is really important. I really want to find her. So she gave me the forms and I filled it out and everything. And I handed it to her. And she's like, have you ever tried Google? And I'm like, yeah, I've tried Google. Thanks for that.
Wow,
Is that your,
yeah, that's
is that what,
brilliant. I would have never thought of that. Yeah,
yeah, you know what? Let me try it real quick on my phone. Oh, can't find her.
sure,
Okay. Now can we
nothing.
file this report?
So,
So then she's like, okay, let me find a detective. So I waited about 10 minutes and she's like, I don't think I can find anybody. And I see a bunch of guys just standing back there. Finally, she goes back there again and it's this guy. He comes out and he walks over. He says, oh my God, my dad was a cop during this time. I definitely I want this case. You know what? Let's work on this. And I brought a copy of my book for him, for background. I said, if you want, you can really dive into the story. Here's the book. He's like, yeah, hold on. Let me get a missing persons case number for you. So he gives me his card, puts the case number on the back, and he's like, I'm on this case. I'm like, this is amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I left. I'm thinking, this is it. I can contact NCMEC. We're going to start working on this. We're going to find her because we have the police on it now. Didn't happen that way at all. It's once again, this story has never been easy. After that happened, I tried to contact this guy. No answer. Always voicemail. I'd leave messages. Nothing. I give the case number to NCMEC. I don't hear anything for quite a while. Finally, they come back to me and said, look, we can't do anything. This is not a real case number. There's no missing persons case open on your sister. And without that, we can't do anything. I'm like, but this cop gave me this number. This is a missing persons case. No, it's not real. We can't do anything. So then I started getting pissed. And
yeah. I mean, why would a police officer lie to you?
Right. And why would you go to the trouble
That's
of giving me a fake number? If you can't take the case, you would just say, you know what? We'll see what we can do and we'll get back to you.
absolutely.
Yeah.
There was no reason to be deceptive at that point in time.
Right. And it was very deceptive. So I got Nino involved. I kept trying to contact this guy. We lost a whole year trying to contact this guy. Finally, I said, this is enough. I'm calling Nino. Nino's going to take care of this. Sure enough, Nino was able to track down his schedule. We called him like at midnight his time when he knew that he was working. Nino gets him on the phone. I'm on the phone too. Nino asks him point blank, what's going on with this case? He tried to give him some BS answer. And Nino said, well, that's funny because I got Paul on the phone right now. Can you repeat that? And that's when it started backpedaling and all that. And so we ended the call. We got no further than we were before. The whole thing was a sham. And that's when I said, I need to go to real police. And that's when we contacted the New Jersey State Police with the help of NCMEC and Ray Harp. He actually got me in touch with Trooper Maloney. And this guy, his specialty was cold cases. And I talked to him. Immediately said, I'm on this case. Here's a real case number. You can file it with NCMEC, which I did. And then all of a sudden we had an age progression photo, which I'm sure we're going to show. And the good thing is I'm working with NCMEC on this. If I have a tip or a clue, I let them know. And they're pretty much working with me, it seems like, for the most part. And I think together we're going to find Jill. And it's about time.
And do you want to talk a little bit about the process of testing women who believed that they were Jill? You've had a couple of those that have come forward and that you've done some testing on. Want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of people out there who don't know who they are, and all they want is their identity. And I can totally get on board with that because that's what I went through. When I found out I didn't know who I was, was the second thing I wanted to do. I wanted to find Paul first. But the second thing was I wanted to find out who I was. So there's probably, I'd say, about 7 women that have come forward, either by themselves or a friend put them forward, thinking that they might be Jill. I've got to talk to and meet a couple of these women. Unfortunately, DNA ruled them out, but we're still in touch today. And the same thing with people that men who thought they were Paul. I've actually befriended 2 or 3 of them, and we're still very close today. It's, when you bond over something like that, where you think you might be, a brother or a sister or this missing person, it's something that you just can't. Oh, I guess I'm not it, and just move on and forget about it. It
Yeah,
stays.
nice knowing
Yeah,
you.
it stays
Yeah.
with you. That's an important. I mean, all the friendships that we have, we met over, maybe a keg party or something like that, and you're still friends after all
Right.
these years. Imagine bonding over something like that, right?
Right. And of course getting to, talking with each other, getting to know each other while you're waiting for the test results to come through and hoping against hope that this is going to be the breakthrough moment. And then the crushing disappointment when the results come in and you find out that they're not the person you're looking for. And they also don't get an answer to their question as well. And so it's trauma bonding, right? Is essentially what's happening here. And that's an incredibly strong bond that you can help them through, they can help you through. But it just adds another dimension to this case that I'm sure listeners and watchers probably don't realize, that when people come forward and say, I don't know who I am, and I think I might be the person you're looking for, the hope that that gives you and them to find their answers, and then to get the answers that is not the one you were looking for. It's hard.
We should actually we should actually do an episode on that. Talking to the people that actually tested, who thought they might have been Paul or Jill, just to see how it affects them and their side of the whole story. Because once again, when we started this whole podcast, I wanted the human element, not just the facts. How does it affect not only people involved, but it's the domino effect, all the people, the ripples outside that are affected by this as well.
And through this entire podcast up to this point, every episode, we have touched on the people outside of you that this has affected for their entire life. There, in every episode, there's someone who has been a part of it and is still influenced by it today and still thinks about it. From the cab driver who picked up the kidnapper with the baby, all the way through to Cece Moore, to Nino Parada, to Dr. Angela Williamson. Both on personal and professional levels, this story has impacted people and stayed with them. Me as well. After meeting you for the first time and reading your books and watching your film and meeting you in person and doing this podcast, my life is forever changed by being a part of this story as well. And so it just has that effect on people, and they carry it with them.
It really does. And because no photos exist of Jill, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created an age progression image to help identify her. She's probably, well, I know she's exactly going to be 62 very shortly. So, I'm sure we're putting the picture up for you. So if you do recognize anyone that looks like this, or if you have any identity issues and you're not really sure if you are who you are, please reach out to either NECMEC, the website, or 1-800-THE-LOST, or reach out to us, because we'll do our due diligence, and we're really good at this, and we'll help you find out who you are.
There's another aspect to the search for Jill, which literally led to you digging a hole in someone's backyard.
You say digging a hole, I say digging a grave.
I was going to let you say it, not me.
Me and Alex, my co-writer, my buddy, we were able to track down my grandma's old house where my parents lived for a while. And this is before we realized that they were actually living in Pitney Village when Jill and I went missing. So we were going on the information that we had at the time. So we found my grandma's house. The house is gone, but the backyard is still there. And the guy who owned it, we tracked him down. He charged us a lot of money to dig a hole on his empty lot. But
It sounds like Pitney Village.
yeah, it does, but it's not, right?
Highway robbery.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Alex and I stopped at Lowe's. We bought some shovels and we went to that empty lot. Right before that, I had paid this guy who does ground penetrating radar. paid him a couple $100 to do a quick little sweep over the property. And he found 3 disturbances, as he called it, that could possibly be grave sites. So he marked them off with an X, and he said, I wish you the best of luck on this one. I hope that you don't find what you're looking for. So Alex and I showed up on this beautiful sunny day in Atlantic City. It was about 95 degrees with 100% humidity and a couple of shovels. So I started digging at the first hole we thought might be the best mark. It was the closest to where the porch would have ended. I thought that if someone was going to bury somebody in someone's backyard, probably do it at night, and you don't want neighbors to see. So it'd be the closest area towards the porch that probably out of sight from the neighbors. So I started digging, and I got down a couple of feet. I'm in pretty good shape for an older guy. But after a while, I'm like, I can't keep doing this. So I'm sweating. It's hot. So we looked over and we saw these guys digging a hole for a pool. So Alex and I walked over there and I said, hey, you guys want to dig a hole over here? Guys like, yeah, we're working on this pool right here. I said, well, how about I give you $100? Just a short time. Guy runs over there, goes, I do this for a living. His name was Shane. Super nice guy. So he jumps in the hole where I had stopped and he started digging. And he was, man, this guy was a digger. I mean, he got down
He was
deep.
a beast.
Yeah, so fast. And he got down about maybe 4 or 5 feet. And he's like, he looks up from the hole and he goes, by the way, what are we digging for? And I said, possibly my sister's remains. He looked at me and he said, I've got a daughter. I'm going down. And I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. And for that, it just, you could, it's like everything just stopped. Time just stopped. This guy's digging down. All of a sudden you see the water starting to come up in the shovel. He actually got down to the water line because the house is only a couple blocks off the Atlantic Ocean. And then all of a sudden you hear a tink, 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 like little bones falling in the shovel. And on that busy lot, on that busy street, you couldn't hear anything. It's like everything just stopped. He held the shovel up and he said, I've been digging holes out here for 15 years. I never saw bones. And he held up the shovel and he had like 3 or 4 little bones in that shovel. And I was like, wow, this is really crazy. I hope it's not my sister, but if it is, at least we know what happened. So we recovered the bones, put them in an evidence bag, for, lack of better words. Alex went and had them analyzed by a museum. Turns out they were just animal bones. But the fact that we found bones 6 feet down in Atlantic City, it really makes you wonder, and who is burying an animal that deep?
Right. You're burying the family pet. Nobody's going to dig 6 or 7 feet down to do that.
Yeah.
So it does beg the question, why were these bones at such a deep level?
Yeah.
And what was the point of doing that? But we're also going to be showing photos as well of the dig. There's for the people that are watching, they'll be able to see some of the pictures from the ground penetrating radar and the dig. I think we also have pictures of the bones as well. But that's a pretty surreal place to be in your life, right? You're in your grandmother's backyard of her old house, a woman you never really met or remember, digging a grave for your missing twin sister. This is not something that happens every day to your average person. And
I'm sure almost everyone in their lives has dug at least one hole, whether you're planting a tree or flowers or a garden, something.
Sure,
You're digging a hole
pet.
for something. Yeah.
Sure.
But when you're digging that hole and each shovel of dirt, you might be getting closer to your sister's remains. That's a feeling that it never goes away. And every shovelful was like, man, am I going to find something? Do I want to find something?
Right.
Do I not want to find something?
You're not sure. Yeah. You're not sure what you want. Do I want to find something or do I not? And that also speaks to Shane, the hole digger. I guarantee you, he's never going to forget that day in his life. He's never going to forget the conversation with you, the why you were doing what you were doing, and how that impacted him. And he only spent maybe an hour or 2 with you. Didn't get deeply involved in the story, but I guarantee you, if you're listening right now, reach out to us, and we'd love to talk to you to get your recollection and where you're at with it now, because I would be willing to bet money that he remembers that day very clearly.
And we might need more holes to be dug.
So today's episode has really sort of given a new light, I think, to the listeners as well as to us about the circumstances surrounding your abandonment and Jill's disappearance, the things that contributed to it, led to it, and given us, just a sharper vision of the situation that you were born into and then ultimately rescued from. And the systemic failures that have happened from the beginning of this case, from the moment that you were recovered in New Jersey, including the kidnapping of Paul Fronczak, and through Jill's case, there's been systemic failures across the board over more than half a century, and they continue. And so this is something that we have, really sort of dug deep into and found these failures and where they have occurred in the past as well as where they're happening now. And it's almost like this is sort of becoming part of our mission as well, to affect change for people that are looking for a missing relative or looking for their own identity, how to give them the justice that they deserve and to fix these systemic failures that lead to this cascade effect of more dysfunction, more trauma, and less answers.
Yeah, it'd be nice if we could find a way to maybe cut the red tape. And if you have a tip, actually act on it. Don't jerk people around and act like you're doing something when you're not, because time is everything. And as we found out on this journey over the last 12 years, that you might be really close to something. And every day that you wait is a day that person could pass away. Circumstances can change where you can't access that information. And that tip that you had that you didn't act on is now gone.
And it cannot be retrieved. And there's been so many of those moments in your quest that if somebody had just turned left instead of right, things could have turned out very differently.
We're still finding that now, right, Tracey?
Absolutely, we are. We are still finding out that there are things happening behind the scenes that we stumbled into, not realizing that there was things happening, and realizing that there's been tips that have been made regarding your case, and nothing is being done on these tips. They've been left to sit for almost a year now at this point. And so we won't go into detail necessarily at this point about it, but there's a pretty significant tip that was given at one point last year that we became privy to. I believe we weren't supposed to be privy to it, but we did get the information. And what we know is the tip hasn't been acted on. So, we get caught in the position of, what do we do here? I think that it is totally understandable to have a distrust of law enforcement at this point in your journey. You've been led astray by them more than once. And so do we leave this in law enforcement's hands, or do we push ahead and see what we can come up with on our own?
Why can't we just work together? It'd be so much easier.
It seems like that would be the easier answer to this problem, is to just work together.
Yeah. Share information. Let's work on it together, because our team is really good at finding things. But the old saying, you don't know what you don't know. And if, anybody out there thinks you might know who Jill is, or you might know somebody who's not sure about their identity, reach out to us, because this is what we do. This is what we want to do.
And I think my favorite part of this journey with you is your steadfast belief that Jill is still alive. And until you are shown otherwise, you will continue to search for her until you can't search anymore. And that's very valiant and very noble and very inspiring.
Well, thank you. Leave no stone unturned, right? It's not just a slogan.
It's a philosophy and a way of life.
And the truth is out there.
It absolutely
We just have to
is.
find it.
And I don't think you're going to stop until you find
That's
it.
right. You aren't either, because you're in this.
I'm in it way further than I ever thought I would be, and obviously too late to back out now.
You're gonna have your own shovel pretty soon.
I hope so. That means I've arrived. If I'm awarded the Fronczak Files Golden Shovel, yes, I have arrived.
One of the most prestigious honors there is. There's
Absolutely.
Emmys and Oscars. That's nice, but the Fronczak Files Golden Shovel, that's it.
That'd be, I think, a great thing for us to maybe do for our Patreon subscribers, is maybe, have some type of a thing developed for them that's a golden shovel. And if you're part of the Fronczak Files team, that's how you know, because you've got the golden shovel. So if you enjoy this podcast and you enjoy listening to us and watching us, shoot over to Patreon and check us out there. There's a lot of exclusive content there that you can tap into, things that are outside of this case, things that are part of this case. And we're always interested in people's ideas and thoughts and theories about this case.
And starting next season, when we start working with other people trying to solve their cases, maybe you can be a voice in that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we welcome everybody's ideas and thoughts about theories and ideas of what's happened here and how we might best move forward. We've learned a lot along the way, but we don't know everything.
And the best way to solve things, spitballing, sitting around talking about it. That's how you find each different, path that something could have followed, and you find the right one.
Absolutely. And so, well, I guess we'll bring this episode to a close. We hope that we have provided some insight to our listeners about what has led to the situation that you find yourself in now. And hopefully they will continue to join us as we keep pushing forward, looking for the solutions. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the disappearance of Jill Rosenthal. This case is as complex as it is heartbreaking, and every lead, every question brings us one step closer to the truth.
Next time on the Fronczak Files, we'll bring you episode 8, Case Updates and Theories. We'll share the latest developments, walk through possible scenarios, and explore where the evidence and lack of it might be pointing.
And we want to hear from you. What do you think happened to Jill? Share your theories with us at info@thefronczakfiles.com or visit our website to send them directly. Your insights could be read during the show and could make all the difference.